There is a Moore's law equivalent for storage, Kepler's law, that talks about it capacity doubling every 2 years. So there is a law, because this is what's given rise to this industry that allows you. I mean, think about where compute is now. Think about how many photos you have on your phone. You probably have thousands of photos on your phone. I mean, that was impossible 10 years ago.
Let's discover the Cleveland entrepreneurial ecosystem. We are telling the stories of its entrepreneurs and those supporting them. Welcome to the Lay of the Land podcast, where we are exploring what people are building in Cleveland. I am your host, Jeffrey Stern, and today I had the real pleasure of speaking with Steve Santamaria, who is the CEO of Folio Photonics, where he is focused on innovating storage media with the first ever enterprise-scale immutable active archive solution that delivers breakthrough cost, security, and sustainability. Steve, who resides here in Chagrin Falls, is a seasoned technology executive, entrepreneur, and student of disruptive technologies. Steve spent 14 years at Intel, where he led an array of strategic projects, including Intel's Microsoft partnership, colloquially referred to as Wintel, investment in China Software Park program, global expansion of the Intel Developer program, formation of the Visual Computing Group to move Intel into more graphics-oriented businesses such as VR and 3D animation, and the launching of various Intel service businesses. Prior to Intel, Steve had a successful sales and business development career with companies including Control Data, Ceridian, Parametric Technology, and Giga Information Group. And most recently, Steve started two companies of his own, WebTuner Corp, an over-the-top video streaming company, and Envelop VR, which created the first Windows desktop environment for virtual reality. I really enjoyed getting Steve's perspective on the future of storage, the prospects for Folio Photonics opportunity looking forward, Cleveland's whole ecosystem, and his reflections on leadership. I hope you all enjoy my conversation with Steve Santamaria. So to start, I'd love if you could share a little bit about your own journey, your path to and from Cleveland. And I know you have quite a breadth of experience in your career across many organizations. And I'd love to hear about, your path from leadership at one of the largest companies in the world at Intel to entrepreneurship and your interest in startups and how that all kind of transpired.
Yeah. So I'm a native New Yorker that grew up in the Midwest outside of Pittsburgh. And I actually went to college at Allegheny College up in northwestern PA. When I graduated, my first job was in Pittsburgh. I worked for Mellon Bank. And then I got recruited to go into sales for a company called Control Data. And the territory is based in Cleveland. So I moved to Cleveland. I had some college friends here. I shared a house in Shaker Heights with 5 guys. I mean, it was crazy. I lived on a couch for the first couple months. Didn't know I was going to make it in sales. Turned out as an okay salesperson. But I lived here for that period for about, 8 to 10 years. And went through, a variety of different companies. When you're on the sales track, you trade your contacts in the region and your territory to better products with higher commissions. And I did that successfully from Control Data to Parametric Technology. I worked for Steve McHale at US Connect for a number of years running his sales teams. And then I got acquired by a company, I was working with a company called iCat out of Seattle, which is an interactive online catalog kind of storefront that got bought by Intel. And it was kind of interesting. It was one of the easier jobs I had. I ran sales from Cleveland kind of remotely, traveled quite a bit. But then the dot-com thing happened where all of a sudden I'm not getting recruited for new jobs all the time. And Intel approached me about moving to Seattle, because they bought the company, but they're just bought it for its tech. So they really didn't need me to be heading sales for this small business. So they asked me if I would go there and take over the Microsoft partnership. So I ran Wintel. And I was at a point in my life where it was a good time for me to leave Cleveland and try something new. I was just started dating a woman, and we moved out there together just to the Pacific Northwest by ourselves. And it was great. Got married, had kids out on the West Coast, was Intel for 14 years. Left. While at Intel, I had a number of different different jobs. It's a great place to work. A lot of structure. My boss eventually became the co-CEO, and as she moved up, I moved up with her. Did a variety of different things globally. I ran groups in China. I ran a graphics business. I ran developer relations. I did deals with Hollywood. You name it. She did a real good job of just putting me in very interesting places. And I did run, as part of the team that ran the largest, duopoly on the planet, which was Wintel, Microsoft and Windows. I did a stint and worked closely with Intel's investment arm, which is called Intel Capital. And Intel Capital introduced me to the whole world of startups. And so I had a team that did basically deal evaluation for Intel investment. And after 14 years in Intel, I was approached by one of the CEOs that we'd invested in to take a job. And I was at the point where I wanted to try something new at Intel. I was tired of the big company. And so I left and went into a startup. It's called a WebTuner, based in Seattle. It was kind of fun. It was kind of an over-the-top TV. And it was eventually sold. Then I started another company with some friends, a virtual reality company that was in its heyday, we were super hot. And then the demise was just as fast. It was kind of crazy how fast it went from being great to being terrible, shut the whole thing down. And at that point, I was just kind of looking around what to do next, still kind of figuring it out. And I got a friend of mine from here reached out and sent my resume into the North Coast Angels. Somehow it wound its way through Northeast Ohio to Case Western, and they were spinning a company out called Folio Photonics, which is, data center data storage. I have that background in me. I worked in the data centers, and I worked these technology products. And I came down and met with the founder. I was a consultant for a number of years, and then I was asked to become the CEO. And then I moved my whole family here, and we went full circle. And I'm now living a mile from the house I lived in Chagrin Falls, in just a different neighborhood. It's quite hilarious, but we're very close now to my wife's entire family's here too. So we get to see all the people we haven't seen, for a very long time. So it's great. So that's kind of in a nutshell how I went that path. But it was a crazy path for sure.
Yeah. A lot of different questions about your journey, but I think what I want to start with is just maybe a detour on the tech transfer process and spin out from Case Western that you mentioned. Because I've actually now had a few folks on where they've kind of navigated this process of taking some kind of endeavor at a university, often Case here in Cleveland. Like, in your opinion, how much unlocked potential is there in these kinds of projects, and what does that actually look like in practice?
Yeah, I was fortunate. The tech transfer was actually done by the founder, Dr. Ken Singer. He's a professor of physics at Case Western. He went through when he tells me the story, it took him 17 months to get the licensing done to take his technology out of the university and to structure Folio. I came in a little bit later when certain things were proven, certain patents were getting approved and to commercialize it. But it was not, like I said, I didn't go through the process myself, but I understand it was a bit laborious, which is striking to me. And I've had conversations with the local universities about the process, because coming from the West Coast with Stanford, University of Washington, all these schools that have very robust tech transfer, it's very easy to get the technology out of the university and into the hands of entrepreneurs. Here, it's a lot of technology gets sold into the big established companies, so they want rev shares. They want to kind of work out all these details. Where on the West Coast, a lot of it's about let's get it into the market as fast as we possibly can, and if it all pans out, we make our money back on the upside. Long-term valuation instead of versus on residuals and retainer fees and things like that get put in place with a lot of deals. So it's a little bit different than the West Coast. That's to be expected, but that's one of the challenges of being in the Midwest. Yeah.
So coming out of your experience at Intel, WebTuner, I'm curious. I understand that your resume got floated to the ether in Northeast Ohio, but how are you thinking about what you wanted to do next and your own motivations at that point in your career, and why go back to a startup?
Well, once you get bit by the startup bug, you kind of get bit by it. I mean, you get kind of addicted. The pace of life at a startup is so much more fun than at a big company now, and it comes with certain risks, right? I mean, I never had to worry about making payroll or running out of money at Intel. right? I mean,
Right.
I could go to the big bank of Intel if I'm over budget and I could find money. I mean, just the way it is. Whereas at a startup, you keep one eye on your bank account and your burn rate as you go through it, gauging and setting up your next funding. So yeah, the whole startup thing, it's addictive a little bit. And so I'm in my third. And in some cases, I can't even imagine, going back to work at a big company. I was just talking to one of my dear friends from Intel just this morning, and he's coming up on his 28th year, 28 years at Intel. I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't. I have a hard time. I was there for 14. I couldn't imagine twice as long, right? So it's a different type of experience. And with a startup, for me, I wanted to be a CEO. I've been general manager. I ran big business units at Intel. In my startups, I was a chief revenue officer, I was a chief operating officer, but I was never the CEO. And I wanted to do that. And so when the opportunity presented itself, it became something that I kind of jumped at. And it's not what anyone thinks it is. I mean, whatever book you read about what a CEO does, I assure you, for a startup, it's not that. It's the greatest surprise. I tell people that all the time. I tell them, what's your biggest surprise? I go, well, you're fundraising all the time. And every detail matters. And you better understand what's going on. I mean, it's just the level of detail. It's shocking. And then look, I took a company, through COVID. And, that was there's no playbook for that. I was talking to my VCs. I go, what are you doing? What are your portfolio companies doing? Goes, well, they don't have a plan. We're trying to figure it out. I'm here putting one-way paths through our factory so that people have a circuit they walk around to avoid bumping into people in the hallway. I'm crawling around my factory, taping arrows to create a flow, and we put rules in. You go past the bathroom, you go in and you wash your hands. You go, we're taking temperatures twice a day. No, you cannot. The lunchroom's gone. We took it apart. The conference rooms that we had, they used to hold 12 chairs, now hold 4. And you had to sit on far corners from each other. It's because we didn't want anyone to get sick. It was hard. And it's like, I don't know what I was doing. We got through it. And, like anything, a bunch of us got sick, sure. And, you're out for 2 weeks. Don't even bother coming in. How to work when we were shut down. At one point, we only had 2 people in the building at one time. And, you stay very far apart and you're wearing a mask. I mean, there's no playbook for that. You're just kind of figuring it out. And at the same time, watching your burn rate saying, okay, we got to keep moving forward, keep developing, keep inventing, keep moving. But now, it's a whole nother set of challenges. It was a challenging experience.
So let's maybe set the stage here for, what it is you're actually producing and what all that figuring it out is for. So tell us a little bit about Folio Photonics, and from an overview, we can dive into the broader space that you're operating in.
So Folio, the technology was spun out of Case Western Reserve is a next generation data storage product, a data storage technology. And you think of data storage, you're thinking, the CDs, DVDs, tapes, et cetera, that store data. But this is really aimed at the enterprise, and it's optical. So an optical product is kind of like Blu-ray, CD, DVD, Blu-ray are optical products. Great consumer technologies over the years. Billions of those things were manufactured. Everyone had a Blu-ray at one time in their life, but it never made it into the data center because capacity on a Blu-ray disc is too small when compared to a hard disk drive or a magnetic tape, which has terabytes of capacity. So the breakthrough that came out of Case was a way to make an optical technology of very, very high capacity and very, very low cost. This is where IP is. And, if you want to get really into the weeds, a Blu-ray disc has 3 layers of storage capacity per side. It's manufactured via a sputtering process where layers are added. So the active layer that gets written to, then a buffer layer, an active buffer, till you get 3. They've never gotten beyond 3 because anything more, all of a sudden, manufacturing yields fall off. What Folio does, and it's in the name Folio, if you think of kind of a book and pages of a book, what we do is we create a photonic film that is extruded. So the extrusion process allows us to have many, many more layers at a very, very low cost of manufacturing. And then you cut the film and you laminate to the disc and you have a high capacity disc. So we're making, 8 and 16 layer films right now. And, it's alternating between the active photonic material and buffer layers. We can manufacture this by the yard after yard, and then we sit there and cut and make it in disc, and it's very, very inexpensive. And the cost is something that's critical. It's not when you think of yourself where you have a couple, megabytes or gigabytes worth of data. You have to look at these data centers, and they have, exabytes and zettabytes. I mean, it goes kind of, megabyte, gigabyte, terabyte, petabyte, exabyte. And an exabyte is a million terabytes. A zettabyte is a billion terabytes. And if you're paying 30 or 40 bucks a terabyte, like your Amazon who has 2 zettabytes, that's 2 billion times that number. It's massive amounts. And the one thing that we have going for us is that, the world's not creating less data. If anything, the world's becoming digital. You're making more. This video, this audio that you're taking, you're going to record is going to be stored on multiple places, backed up here or there. It's up in the cloud. The cloud is a collection of huge data centers that have spinning hard disks in that. And so this is the market that we're targeting. It's like I tell my investors, it's a $100 billion plus market opportunity with a 28% CAGR growth. And it's dominated by 3 tape vendors, 3 HD vendors, and about a half a dozen SSD vendors. That's it.
Yeah.
And those technologies are all kind of legacy technology. So we're kind of a next gen going after that great big market. So it's kind of exciting right now.
No, it's very exciting. And so all this is in the context, as you mentioned, of, hard storage, solid state storage. Maybe you could just paint a little bit picture of the, how data storage has changed over time and where, the history of it came from and how, receptive the market is to the innovation that you're bringing to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the challenge. I mean, data storage has been around since, the first computers, 1950s. I mean, you have a compute element, and you have a storage element that provides the data that gets computed against. And then if you want to keep it for any time, you're going to store it. The original products, if you go way back to the mainframe days, they had, they were cardboard cards. They had palm cards that were, they were key punch, and they would store them. I took a programming class in college. I'm dating myself, but our program was a cardboard box of cards, right? That was your program. That was your data. Then came the magnetic tape, and magnetic tape's been around. It used to be like a big spool. You see those pictures in the old days of the IBM mainframes. Now it's in a cartridge, kind of like an 8-track cartridge. It's very shocking to me when I came back into this industry that tape is still around, but it's still a $2 billion business and growing because they do amazing things with tape. Those tape guys are just amazing. But there's only 2 vendors left. Fujifilm and Sony make the tape, and IBM makes the drives that write and read to it. That's it. The next big advance is the hard disk drive, which we all know from our PC days, right? Because it's a consumer product. But they also have them in the enterprise, in data centers, where you have rack after rack of thousands of these drives. The hard disk drives that are spinning these metallic platters that they're writing and reading data to and magnetically storing the data. Now it's fast data, it's very good, but it has a very short life. A hard disk drive lasts 4 years. So if you're the Cleveland Clinic, you want to store patient data for a life of patient plus 30 years or 100 years, you're going to migrate your data 25 times. You're going to buy new media. You're going to move it. You're in this massive migration problem. And then, then came the SSDs, the software, the semiconductors products, and they are just wicked fast. I mean, this is where all the great compute stuff for AI and machine learning goes, just process massive amounts of data, but they're also very expensive. At roughly about $150 a terabyte. HDDs cost in the 20s, 20, 25 a terabyte. Magnetic tape costs about 8 to 10. We're producing a product that we're looking at $3 to $5 a terabyte, right? So for an optical, and it's more of an archival product, meaning stuff you want to store a long time. It's not for that high compute. You think of when you're doing a calculator, 2 plus 2, right? Bang, in an instant, what that is. But this is stuff like, hey, here's my kids' photos from when they were born, or their first birthday, their second birthday.
Right. This is static things that are not changing.
It's static, right? It's object, and you're going to pull it back and look at it. And that's where really the big market is going, because nowadays we're in a world where nobody wants to delete anything. So
right.
The goal is you create it because you don't know if you're going to delete something that's important, right? And so you may need it. And then there's a rise of a new job called a data scientist, right? Data scientists weren't around 10 years ago. I have a nephew that took it in college, and he's got great job offers. But it's 10 years ago, there wasn't a thing because there really wasn't enough data to go analyze. Now you have massive amounts of data, and you have tools. And just think of like mapping softwares or satellite imagery. Think of the military applications. They take the same picture from the same satellite every day for 30 years and they compare it, and you can tell troop movements. You can say, what's happening underneath it. That's all massive analysis that's being done by computers, and they want that data. So you're storing every single thing you do. You don't want to delete it, but you have to be cognizant that if you have 1 million terabytes, do the math. If you keep it all on flash or SSD and you're paying $150 a terabyte, it's $150 million. You put it on HDD at 20, it's $20 million. You put it on tape, it's 8. It's expensive. And so you got to start lining yourself up to optimize, what is the data that you need access to, the smallest amount, you put it on the flash, and you start staggering down so that you optimize your budgets for what the use of the data is. Because a lot of data isn't used for 10 years, pulled up 20 years, right?
You mentioned what I feel like is often the holy grail aspiration of companies, which is to find that 10x exponential improvement in something. And you mentioned just cost. So is it like what does that look like in practice? How much do you have to sell people at this point to convince them? Where is it in the education process of people's familiarity with, like, is this too good to be true? Does it follow like Moore's law, like compute does? Are people like attuned to thinking of it in that way?
Yeah. I mean, there is a Moore's law equivalent for storage, Kepler's law, that talks about it capacity doubling every 2 years. So there is a law, because this is what's given rise to this industry that allows you. I mean, think about where compute is now. Think about how many photos you have on your phone. You probably have thousands of photos on your phone. I mean, that was impossible 10 years ago. And now we're just like, my daughter takes 1 billion Snapchat photos a day, and it just boom, gets stored, gets thrown up in the cloud, and it doesn't cost her anything. It costs, we pay $9 a terabyte, for a month of storage or some crazy number like that. It's so inexpensive. And that same thing, I have a hard disk drive here from 1950 that I use, and it's about the size. It's about 18 inches in diameter. It held like 18 megabytes of data. IBM made it. It cost $10,000 in the 1950s. 18 megabytes. I have a disk now. It's going to hold a terabyte for $5, and that's 1 million of those things. It's kind of crazy how the cost. It's that decrease in cost, which this is what allows these new usages, these new things to happen for you to create, cloud, and for some of these, your music editing, your video editing, all that kind of stuff. You have to have very inexpensive storage. And, that's what, that we bring to the market here. So, yeah, I mean, we are following that curve. We have a price advantage because we have a material advantage. And, if you think of it, a lot of technology has what they call the S curve, right? So it starts out low, gains adoption, and then you start to peter out because you start running out of ways to continue to scale that product. And, a lot of the magnetic technologies are on a kind of a 40-year S curve where they're running out of ability to increase capacity. And so with our technology, we say, hey, we're starting at the bottom of an S curve. We're about to, HDDs at the top of their S curve. Incremental gains cost a lot of money. We're starting at the bottom. So we have all this upside. So we'll go from 1 terabyte to 2 to 5 to 10 per terabyte per disk and continue to drive that cost curve down. And so, that's the order of magnitude thing that you're talking about. We have good economics in terms of the order of magnitude in terms of pricing, because let's be clear, data storage is a commodity. So you're storing a 0 or a 1. I mean, it's plus or minus magnetically, or for us, it's light versus dark spots, right? But it's a 0 or 1. So it's a cost thing. And so that comes into play because off the bat, we have to be, if we're going to enter this market and gain share, we have to be lower than the lowest that's available. And so we clearly have sights on that. And once you get people over that hurdle, well, then the other benefits come into play, like, hey, our media life's over 100 years. So you can store it once and not touch it again for a very long time. The big one that's coming into play right now quite a bit is power savings. When you store on a Folio disk, when the data is not in use, the disk just sits, it doesn't spin. And it doesn't require air conditioning or any environment, it just sits. I mean, think of your own life. CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays that you had in the seat of your car or your kid's playroom, you didn't keep them in a cool, dry environment. Just use them, and they're basically indestructible. So that's an advantage that we have. Versus you take a magnetic tape, you got to keep it cold. You got to keep it in a very dry place. Humidity's bad. Hard disk drives have to spin all the time. They're always spinning, always consuming power. So we have like 1,000x in terms of over 5 years of power savings that we have of some of these products. So these come into play. But sustainability and power savings, I'll share a fact. Today, 3% of the world's electricity generated goes to power data centers.
Wow.
Think about that. They're projecting it'll be 10% by 2030 because more and more data centers are being built. Now, storage is typically about 1/3 of the power cost inside of a data center. So anything that you can knock off that and save 1% of global electricity, that's a huge, huge, huge advantage. And and in the U.S., you don't see it as much because you have ample access to power. But some of these other foreign countries, they don't have access to power. They don't have that power generation, the nuclear, the coal fired, all the different ways, the hydro that we have here. So our power is relatively low. You go to an island in the Caribbean, their power bill is way is much different. So anything you can do to help them save power it's a big thing for us. So that's kind of a side benefit of optical. And the third one, it's security. I mean, all you hear about is ransomware attacks. And what is a ransomware attack? Is someone goes in and basically corrupts your data and says, hey, either pay me a couple $1,000,000 or your data's gone. Now, dirty little secret here, HDDs and SSDs are always connected, and that's who they target. You take an optical disc, you take a tape has the same benefit, and just take it out of the system and put it on a shelf. There's no way someone can touch that. It has to be mounted, spun up, etc. So you have this thing called an air gap. And that's a big, big advantage for these type of technology, especially on things you want to save for a very long time that you don't need sub-nanosecond access to, right? Like your family photos. I'd be very unhappy if someone got into my library and corrupted all my kids' baby photos and things like that. I'd be like, I'd pay the damn ransom. I don't want to do that. So I look for, this is an opportunity for us. So those are the big three. Lowest cost in the industry, the cybersecurity angle, and then real big in sustainability and power savings for our technology versus the incumbent. So we're looking forward to kind of getting that market.
Yeah, it's a compelling sell. I feel like I am sold. So what I'm curious about is like where there is resistance, if there is any, and like one of the stories as you were talking that came to mind was I remember one of the challenges that NVIDIA has where, production of chips and following the similar Moore's Law trajectory is often, what they're putting out is so far ahead that people don't feel ready yet. They don't have the capabilities to even like use to fully utilize the product that you're offering. Is there what is the resistance if there is any?
Well, the resistance, like a lot of technology, there's just legacy, people don't want to change.
Yeah.
I've been an HDD guy for 25 years. You want to store data for 100 years. I'll be dead before I need data in 100 years. I mean, you get that conversation. So there's a lot of, just inertia from the big storage guys that, it's kind of working right now. Why do I want to upset my apple cart? But then things happen that cause people to take notice. And then the rising costs all of a sudden, when it's 10% of your budget, okay, we can get by on that. But it's 20%. All of a sudden, well, then people come in, they go to their data center guys say, well, you have to delete data because we're not going to pay for you to expand anymore. And they go, okay, you pick which of your data files we'll delete. Nobody wants to delete any data, so then they get their budgets approved. So money does come into it, and we're just getting over it. Now, optical is a little bit different because it's always been viewed as a consumer technology. So we've kind of a hurdle saying that, started out as consumer technology. Now we're moving into the data center. So it's more robust, right? It's enterprise ready. And, that's kind of the space we're in right now. But enough people are very curious that we're starting to make, some good headway for, early partners and early customers. So the future looks really good for us. It's just that, we're anticipating it's going to be like anything else. We'll work until we get a breakthrough, and then it's going to happen. Then it's going to be a lot of crazy fun.
Right.
But, then a whole nother set of problems come up, right? Like
endless problems. But
and
different problems, better problems.
Endless good problems, right?
Well, one of the other questions I have, you mentioned the kind of commodity nature of it, and often think with commodities, it's somewhat of a race to the bottom
Uh-huh.
in terms of, right? Like the cost of it. And so how do you think about that, from a competitive perspective, from a differentiation perspective?
For us, the race to the bottom is an advantage
Yeah.
because we start with a lower cost basis than the other products, right? I was talking to a guy at IBM and he said, the next generation tape product they come out with, it's like 450 million investment to build that factory. I'm like, so you got to make at least 450. We don't spend that much money. The manufacturing process for film production, don't need a clean room. Extrusion is a very well-known technology. Film is highly scalable, a lot of volume. We just come in with a real nice place in terms of our cost model. We can get lower and we have the margin to be able to embrace that. And, once we get settled here, those guys want to get in a price war. Okay, good. We can discount a lot more than they can. Just of the bill of material costs alone, that we're much less. So that's not something we fear, right? But, and in the end, it's all good. The thing that people have to, when I look at enter the market is, again, you have to realize the size of the market. In 2025, new capacity is going to require about 3.5 zettabytes. That's 3.5 billion terabytes of data. If we just sell 5 exabytes, I'm happy as a clam. I mean, the big guys won't even notice us that we're getting this little bit here, but we're a nice little company at that point. We're in the tens of millions of maybe closer to 100 even of revenue. Now, does that scare Western Digital? Well, hell no. They're 22 billion, right? Does it scare the Seagates of the world, et cetera? No. But we'll start, and there are enough edge cases and swim lanes that we can get ourselves established, we believe, and start to get some, get revenues in and start, demonstrating use cases. And then we'll slowly start moving up. It's kind of a land and expand strategy, and then move throughout that enterprise. And we got people lined up already, right? So we're kind of excited about that.
In all this, you're building it out in Northeast Ohio. Like, what does the company look like? How is it? Sounds like you might need some amount of capital, maybe not the amount that you would need for other means of storage, but
that's why we're out fundraising right now, right? Because we announced in May, end of May, beginning of June, we were writing and reading to an 8-layer folio disk. Okay, so that's a major breakthrough. Previous to that, 4 layers was a 4-layer disk was kind of the maximum of an optical product that was demonstrated. So we doubled that. We dropped the press release in August, kind of setting up for this fall for our fundraising. We're out there actively engaging with the VC community, the venture community right now to raise our B round to allow us to build the factory to make those disks. Yes, there's a certain capital cost in terms of equipment, and then then building up the workforce, which gets people in Cuyahoga County and Summit County and Geauga County kind of excited because they're trying to land us with our jobs because our manufacturing jobs aren't being paid $15 an hour. Our manufacturing jobs are getting paid $35 and $40 an hour. So it's this is the kind of jobs that we're trying to create a cycle for inside of Northeast Ohio. So it is rather exciting. We'll move from our building right now. We're in Solon. We have around 10,000 square feet. We need probably another 30,000. So we're starting to talk with the realtors and the brokers to find that factory space. So we'll get that in place. So got to buy some expensive equipment, got to find a new building, got to move everyone into the new building. We have partners for other components of drives and libraries that are being built for us in Europe and advanced optics, things like that. So we're kind of putting the whole supply chain together. There are a lot of moving parts, but what's fun right now is a year ago they were just kind of their wish list. But now they're starting to manifest going, okay, we're on track here. We're on track here. We're on track here. Let's go, move up the stack. Let's get this done, et cetera. It's just, I tell the team, I go, we have a plan, execute the plan. And, I just say to Intel all the time, I go, how do you peel a pile of potatoes? One potato at a time. Don't get distracted by the size of the pile. Just keep back grabbing potatoes, doing your job, peel the damn thing, throw them in the bucket and grab another one, grab another potato. And pretty soon you grab enough of them, then all of a sudden, you're off to the races. And, right now it's fun because we have some line of sight that we can see certain things. It's exciting.
Oh, that is very exciting. How has it been fundraising? How is the story resonating? I mean, I'm sold, I'll give you some money, but
We raised, I don't know, 14 million so far with an A round from local angels. We have 2 VCs on. The state of Ohio, through their Jobs Ohio program, are also an investor. It was a task, but it went well. The current market right now, it's kind of funny. I'm having all the conversations. There's interest in what we do. What's interesting now is that with the dip in the technology stocks in the stock market that's hit in the last 6 months, it's, everybody's like knocking down your valuation, right? Going, well, you know what? Last year you might have been valued at 75 million. Now you're at 40. I'm like, oh, well, whoa. Hang on a second. We didn't do anything different, but they're getting away. It's kind of what the market will bear. So we're still kind of looking through it. We're raising. We have some interested parties that I'm hopping on a plane tomorrow. Off we go, and hope to get this thing wrapped up this year. That will allow us to do the expansion and the commercialization that we want to. We just signed a term sheet with a first customer and partner. You'll hear more about it. I can't say anything now. It's not a final agreement yet, but our attorneys are working away trying to get that banged into an agreement. So that'll be exciting. That'll be announced probably later this fall. So things are moving forward. But it's not as, I don't want to say, it's just not a robust great time to be raising money. And, a lot of people are crying about it because it's tough right now. But, we have a compelling story, a compelling value proposition. It's now got to get the number that we need. We'll find it.
Yeah. What has you most excited as you think about, what's coming down the pike?
I am really looking forward to getting a commercial product done, qualled, and start and into into an installation. Because right now it's all prototype stuff and it's PowerPoint presentation center. It's provable. I say, hey, here's a damn disk, put it in, write your data to it. How much data can you write onto it? And oh, by the way, it costs $5. Now, do that with any other product. You can't. Then I'm like going, the conversation changes at that point, right? So for me, it's about getting that first product done. I can't wait. And along the way, look, I've been here now since 2018, right? The naysayers, they're like, oh, optical's dead. You'll never be able to do this. You can't do 8 layers. You can't do 16. You can't focus that, blah, 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 blah. All the people say, no, I'm going to go around to all of you like, God, I wrote your name down in my book. Guess what? I'm going to send you a note. It's done. It's done. It's done. Because there are people that did that. And it's like, part of the thing about being an entrepreneur in any environment is, keeping your spirits up and understand that you're going to face rejection. And always have people say, never going to happen, not going to work. And you got to stay above it. You got to keep your team motivated. So, right, we're what, 20 people right now. I have an office in Solon. We have a research office in Longmont, Colorado. I have, 4 or 5 people out there. And, I try to keep our team highly motivated, which is hard during COVID, hard during all these other things. But, it's kind of coming around right now. It's kind of exciting. So for me, getting the first product done, I'll be like, ha, I will.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
I don't want to be totally arrogant, but I'm like, ha, you said I couldn't. And guess what? We did. There we are. It's very exciting.
It's one of the more sasatisfying things for being naysayers wrong.
and the thing is, I probably won't even spend any time doing the hobby because I'll have a million other things that I have to work on now, right? About we have international, we have other manufacturing, we have supply chain, But at that point, I will take a moment out and saying, here's the first product out. Ha. And
no, you gotta celebrate success.
You have to, because otherwise you're just kind of just grinding. And I don't want to grind all the time. I want to give the ha. That'll be fun. So
maybe widening the scope of that a little bit. What does success look like to you more broadly? Like if you achieve success, what is the impact that you would have hoped to have in retrospect?
Well, there are a couple things. Coming to Ohio was a conscious decision that my wife and I made. We wanted to come back. So take out being a very successful company, good cash flow, growing, all that kind of stuff. But, I look at the region and, I want to be part of the story here that says, hey, he came back and he introduced a high-tech company in here, kind of break the mold of what's happening. Like, how excited am I that Intel put a big, huge fab in Columbus, which is fabulous. And it's going to be great for the state of Ohio. Is it going to be great for Northeast Ohio? I don't know. Or is it going to be a big sucking sound where everything going down, all the good jobs go down 71 and all the smart people? But let's do something to invigorate this region. I'm very committed to that. We talked beforehand. When I came here, I got pulled into the Blockland effort, and and so I like giving back. I like the idea of creating great jobs in Northeast Ohio. I tell my research engineers all the time. I said, hey, your job is to make us successful and then quit. Take all the money you made from me and start another company. It's kind of similar. I mean, that's what Silicon Valley is, right? Let's be clear. Intel is on the east side of the 101, and then AMD is on the west side. NVIDIA is 3 miles away, a little bit south. I mean, they're all within spitting distance of each other. And I'd like to see this whole region change and become more of a tech hub. And you start to see people move to it. Universities starting to kind of gearing up. They're shifting some of the curriculum, some of the research into it. And it's more than just med tech. I mean, there's room for hard tech like the stuff that we do at Folio. There's room for software companies. It's a great place. Cleveland, you have a great big lake. Weather's generally good. Cost of living is not bad compared to some of the other places, right? It's kind of a little bit hidden jewel, and I'd like to call attention to that. I'm about bringing back to the kind of the area where I grew up, where my wife's family's from, et cetera. Is like give back here a little bit. Let's start something. Let's turn this place around a bit. Hey, the Browns won last night. It's a good thing, right?
It is a good thing. I would be interested in going on a little detour and just getting your perspective as a former Intel, leader about this move to Ohio and inverting the situation. Like, what needs to happen for it to not, benefit Cleveland, and how do we avoid that from happening?
Well, it's podcasts like what you're doing here. And I mean, there's not a super great ecosystem here. All right, I'll give you a story. I started a VR company with two of my friends in Bellevue, Washington, which is right across the big lake, Lake Washington from Seattle. And we kind of kicked around, we kept meeting, and we came up with a concept that made a lot of sense. We kind of mocked it up, and we're going, okay, this idea hunts. And so as entrepreneurs going, now the next step is we need to raise money. And so in Bellevue, you go to the Gaucho restaurant / bar, and the bar at the El Gaucho in Bellevue is a big L-shaped bar. And on Thursday nights, the short end of the L is kind of where all the VCs hang out. So we go walking down there, talking to, seed capital, things like that, talking. We walk away, got a couple of business cards, had a great steak, by the way, called those guys, and we raised $2 million about 3 weeks later. Just, mining that and that network. So now going, okay, we got money. So now we grabbed the space in a building in Bellevue, and we said, we got to start hiring engineers. So you go back to the same bar, and now you go in the long arm, and it's all the Microsoft, Google, Facebook software guys, been around for a while, done really well. And that's where we started, recruiting engineers, and we found kind of two of our principal engineers that came out of that restaurant. So you have this huge network where you can go and you can find money, and you can find people and things like that. And so that is what is kind of lacking here in Northeast Ohio. Like, where do you go? Is there a place in Ohio City where tech people go hang out? I don't know, because I haven't been there yet. I have my place where I go to with my friends, but they're all lawyers. And all they talk about is suing people and doing things like that. And it's great fun. But I'm the odd duck in the group. I'd like to find a place where there are more people like me, where we can talk about the challenges, because fundamentally, versus the West Coast, what takes a minute on the West Coast takes an hour in Cleveland or the Midwest. What takes an hour on the West Coast takes a day in Cleveland. What takes a day on the West Coast takes a week. What takes a week takes a month. There's a lot of friction in getting things done. Your hiring process is longer in terms of vetting and getting people in here. Your supply chain is a lot different. The nature on the West Coast is people want to move very quickly, right? They get it, because you're just burning money if you're a startup. So things are faster. My West Coast attorneys could flip a contract in 2 or 3 hours. Here it will take 3 or 4 days. It's often the case. Like, that's burn money, right? I'm just wasting money at that point. And so, I'd like to see more urgency. I'd like to see a better network of resources for entrepreneurs to tap into. I mean, look, I proposed this at one of the meetings. I go, boy, think about all the IP that sits in Sherwin-Williams, Eaton, Parker, all these big companies.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's stuff that they have IP around, and they're never going to do a damn thing about it, but they have the patents filed, they own them. I go, what if they pooled all that and made it available so that an entrepreneur could come and just kind of go through it and see if something comes to mind and then cut a licensing deal? I mean, some of the, in the bowels of these buildings, even the universities, and cases, stuff like that, huge amounts of IP, but not all of it's being worked. So do the stuff that's not being worked, make it available to somebody to go find, create that environment so that who knows what they're going to invent. It's going to be kind of crazy. I mean, the guy that, he invented the sticky note was trying to come up with a glue that lasted forever. Instead, it became something that, you can use over and over and over. I mean, accidents happen and they're good. And I like to see that happen because there's kind of a lot to be said up here, right? In Northeast Ohio, foundationally. So.
Yeah. Well, no, all that resonates quite a lot. I think the theme that I've picked up on from just a lot of people and some of my own impetus for doing this is it's somewhat of a density problem because there's a lot of people doing really cool stuff here, but it's how do you facilitate the interactions between those people in a way that doesn't require someone from Avon Lake to drive to Chagrin Falls and
and frankly, the other thing that I would ask is how do you keep the Snoopy big companies out of the conversation? Because, sometimes, when I assume the blockchain stuff, I go, oh, hey, we got some blockchain guys. And you can tell who they are because they're all wearing, black T-shirts and hoodies, right? But then they're also, 10 people from KeyBank came down, wanted to check out the meeting. And that just, it's not the right vibe, right? I mean, let the startups do startup stuff. I mean, there's a time for the big companies to come in, but, everyone's rushing to embrace sometimes. I think it does a disservice and something. And I don't mean to pick on Key. I'm just using them as just a big
yeah.
But, we have a lot of big corporations here. And, big corporations is not where innovation or startup, these type of things happen, these kind of breakouts, right? And so, I'd like to just see a little bit more vibrant of a community. And then, the supporting. Look, the struggle that I've had to get a credit card for my company. Oh, good. We don't have any revenue yet, but we had a couple million in the bank. And banks are saying, no, we can't give you a credit card. You don't have any revenue. I go, you have my bank account. Why can't you give me a credit? I mean, on the West Coast, Silicon Valley Bank, there are people that cater to startups, right? And they assume a little bit of risk. We pay a little bit more, but it's fine. Your insurance, right? You have to offer good benefits to attract these people, right? And you going to places that pooled startups so that they could have better rates and things like that. There's just a number of things that would be a lot easier that I could see. Opportunistically could improve around here. They'd be kind of great. I get on my soapbox every now and then. But,
No, I love that. I would love to talk more with you about that.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I want to circle back to, though, actually, what you mentioned earlier on was that, perhaps the job that people perceive to be, what it is to be a CEO is quite different from the realities of it. And I want to kind of gauge your perspective on leadership. And in preparation for this conversation, actually, I came across a term, you carry with you, which is nemawashi, which is one that I actually also love. And so just for, the sake of everyone who does not know what that is, I'd love if you could explain it, but also just what do people need to understand about the role of a CEO that they maybe don't, and how you think about leadership?
So, for leadership, it's setting direction. You want to give people quite a bit of freedom to kind of execute, but you have to stay very, very tuned to it, especially early on, right? Trust is built as teams start hitting deliverables, things like that. But early on, you're watching everything to make sure that milestones are being met, right? That that you do a plan, you execute a plan. So, we're doing, stand-ups and retros and things like that. So a lot of communication and a lot of awareness being generated. Really, also as a CEO, making sure that the interdependencies are in place, that, people aren't being supported or in a bad case, they're not being supported. So how can you mitigate that? Help solve those interpersonal, inter-team type of problems. But it's really about strategy, right? It's about looking very, very long term and kind of have a plan and have plans for the plan and plans for, all the different options of the plan. We have 3 or 4 plans. Okay, fundraising comes in at this. This is what we do. If it comes in this, we do this. We do. We try to have all those contingencies planned for so we can mitigate them and just you just turn and go. So you're not, oh, stop, I got to rethink the whole plan. Okay, so have it so people can follow, lay that roadmap. But strategy is key. Now, the Nemawashi thing is kind of interesting because as CEO, you're the number one salesperson of your company. You're number one salesperson to the investment community, and you spend a lot of time raising money. But all the strategic partners that you want to talk to, I mean, we're dealing with big companies. We deal with Amazon. We deal with, Microsoft. We deal with Western Digital, IBM, Seagate, you name it. We're talking to these guys all the time. And Nemawashi comes into is like, so you start engaging, and this is where my experience at Intel, it's hard to figure out how a decision is done in a big company. Right. And so you gotta have your fox that's going to help you find the ultimate decision maker, but you realize it's a lot of time it's consensus and decision making. And so you invest a lot of time in building relationships. So when I just came back from the West Coast and I had meetings, for example, with Western Digital, and I'm going to be there for a week. So I had like 7 or 8 different meetings. I had 1 or 2 breakfasts and a dinner, went drinking out with a guy who's not even part of it. Who I'm working with is the core Western Digital, but he gives me insights and he, helps give me direction and helps lay the groundwork for, it's the Nemawashi side of it, right? You're spending time understanding, your partners, their business, and you're branching out. It's very rarely one-on-one, make a decision and go, right? It's going to find these other people, and culturally, especially when you're working in big companies, you got to understand that, and you have to invest a little bit in Nemawashi, right? It's like spend the time, do the homework. It's a tax. Stuff that we're doing now was started 3-4 years ago. As let's just have a meeting, let's do this, and then like, well, this leads to this, leads to that. A little bit of advice here, a little bit of advice that. You kind of work your way around, you start popping up in dialogues internally with these partners, and next thing you know, here we go. And so so I mean. I'm curious when you said that you knew the word, because if you've dealt with Japanese companies, you kind of know the word. But for a lot of U.S. companies, we're not Nemawashi, and it's
no, I don't think we are. I hadn't come across it through actual Japanese companies, but through the nature of the more of the day-to-day work that I do, which is in product management, which is all about getting the buy-in of different stakeholders from customers, engineering, sales, success, design, and prioritizing what we need to be working on and have that be extensible and accretive. And you need to do the groundwork and lay the foundation for people to come to agreements.
Right, because what you want is you want people to buy into the vision and they just naturally do the right thing. Right. And so product management, that's a tough skill, right? Because you are right. You're dealing with the engineers are saying, nope, it can't be done. This is what we need to do. And they're stubborn. This is what we want to go do. And then you have kind of the customer angle or the people in the field saying, well, this is kind of what we want to do, et cetera. Then you have like the financial guys in the company and the CEO saying, hey, we got to make money on this thing, time to market, low cost, how are we doing this, max margin. So it's an amorphous blob that you're trying to shape into a thing that works. So hats off to you for coming up down that path, because it's not easy, and you're always looking to find people who are good at it. It's a skill. It's definitely a skill. And then Nemawashi does come up for sure in that respect, because you're doing it all the time. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's fun though.
Hey, look, I have a wife and 2 daughters. I'm doing Nemawashi at home all the time, right?
That's awesome. Cool. I think we've covered a lot of ground here. I want to leave a little space, perhaps if there's something that you think is particularly important that we haven't talked about yet, whether that's part of your experience, the Cleveland ecosystem, company building process, just kind of leave it open for you here. Well,
listen, primarily to entrepreneurs out there, you're gonna shake a lot of trees to kind of get where you want. There's no excuse for not a lot of effort. You can find it. It's in Cleveland. And you're going to have to network to it in a lot of cases. You're going to work through it, and you're going to call in favors. I use my board extensively. I have an amazing board of Cleveland business people. they go from like Bob Pavey to, Ron Richards at the Cleveland Foundation, Felix Bruick, ex McKinsey, is chair of our board. These people are super, super well connected. They love to give their time and help you and give you advice. You don't have to listen to it all, but they're just a great one to do it. And they broker relations, and you just have to work it. It's never just, it's not as simple as you're solving a problem and boom, and you're off to the races. No, there's a lot of nemawashi going on, and you bet. And Cleveland has it. It's just like you said earlier. There's not a density, where you can find it. Like I've had, I have friends inside of Lubrizol that I've shared. It has nothing to do with my business, but we talk to the same technology customers. And I go, okay, no, there's a little piece here. Let's save this little nugget. And so you start collecting all these different things. And it's just a lot of effort, and you have to go into it with your eyes wide open and say, look, it's just not about inventing a better mousetrap. It's now, going out there and finding all the different pieces people that you need to contact to bring it to market, and it's hard, but it's doable. It's not that it's not doable here. It's just not as natural. There's just not a natural gravity to create startups here that is in the West Coast. And so, hey, I hope I'm successful. I hope the next guy's successful. Then you start to create kind of a culture that allows this to happen. And, and that's what we're hoping, trying to, it's be the, start the snowball rolling down the mountain, let it get some momentum, let it get bigger here, and let's overwhelm everything, because it can happen. It's available out here. So, My thing is like, just keep grinding, man. It's every day. Just move the ball forward a little bit. That's what I try to say. I come in every day, you're putting your hours in. Did I move the ball? Did I advance it a little bit? That's my goal all the time. And you keep doing that. And all of a sudden, oh, I scored a touchdown. Cool. And then celebrate quickly. And you realize you got another one to go do. And you go do that. So that's it. But other than that, Cleveland's a great place. And you can find, there are success stories out there. And everyone's willing to help. I help entrepreneurs who I've met in this journey who've called me up saying, hey, I'm going to pitch you this idea. And I spent one that just got his first fundraising. And, he sent me, here's my pitch deck. I go, okay, this sucks. And, I say it with love. Yeah. It sucks. And let's tighten this thing up. And then we spent, evenings for 2-3 weeks. And all of a sudden, boom, he got it. And he sent me a very nice bottle of wine. He goes, thank you very much. That's all I want. And I go, hey, you gave me a thank you. And he raised his first round of money off of that. And so, help each other out, right? Because it's one success, we all succeed. It's kind of good like that.
Yeah. I appreciate your simultaneous pragmatism and optimism.
Okay. Pragmatism and optimism.
Because I don't know. I feel like it's somewhat different from the broader narrative here.
Well, look, I'm a glass half full type of guy by nature, but but I do recognize certain limitations, and you just gotta, like you said, pragmatically approach them and knock them off. Right, saying, okay, this is a risk, this is a challenge. We need to mitigate it. We got to resolve it, move on. But you can't let it bring you down. As CEO, if you have a down day, it bleeds across the organization. Oh, if I'm cranky, I don't want everyone else to be cranky. So you got to kind of keep them up, keep it going, keep that face on, and keep moving forward. That's the joy of leadership, right? And the challenge. So that's what it is.
Well, earlier you mentioned that Cleveland in and of itself is somewhat of a hidden gem,
yes.
Which, sets the stage for my traditional closing question for everyone, which is for your favorite hidden gem in Cleveland. And, maybe it is Cleveland, but I'll pose that.
Look, I live on the east side. I live in Chagrin Falls, and I love that little village. And there are things around here. Now, the hidden gem that other cities don't have are the metro parks. And everyone says, oh, the metro parks. But specifically, look, I have a giant Labradoodle that likes to swim. And we go down to, off Solon Road, there's Quarry Rock. And then there's like the Lookabout Lodge off of Miles. And we just go hiking in the woods. Very rarely is anyone there. So bang, I can have him off leash. Next thing you know, he's in the river. I'm in the river. And the waterfalls, it's just, sometimes you take a bump and go, oh my God. we just climbed down a series of 6 waterfalls, and we're 5 miles from our house, and there's no one here. And so to me, the Metro Park systems that are tied around the Chagrin River, I explore them all the time. It's just, you can just wait them. In the summertime when it's hot, everyone goes to where the parks are, but okay, get in the water, walk 200 yards downstream, and you're where no one else has been, and you're finding all these pools and falls. It's kind of great. So that's my thing. I'm a foodie. I like Italian food. My go-to in Chagrin, I love M Italian because in my book, they have the best eggplant parmesan, and I get yelled at every time we go there because I only get one thing. That's why I never change. My wife does it. And I have a group of guys that go up to Flower, which is in Moreland Hills off of Somme. And on Tuesdays, they have half-price bottles of wine. And so we started going there when I moved back with like one of my best friends who lives here. And he's a lawyer with one of the big firms in town. And it's grown to where we have about a dozen guys, anywhere from 6 to 12 guys show up every Tuesday. In fact, I'm going to go there tonight. And I don't need a reservation. They're going to go in. They hold us a table. We come in. Through the pandemic, we went every Tuesday night.
Oh, wow.
And it's kind of cool, and it's just a great atmosphere, and I love it. And so those are my gems. I love the town of Chagrin. I love the metro parks, the easy access, and then 100 yards off the path, and you're in places where no one else is. Take your dog and have a blast. And then I gave you my 2 favorite restaurants, and now it's going to be tough for me to get a table. So,
yeah, hopefully we don't, rush on Tuesdays. But
secret.
No, to our dozens of dedicated listeners, I think we'll be all right.
This is great. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate it. If folks had anything they wanted to follow up with you about, what would be the best way for them to do so? Go
to the website, www.foliophotonics.com. You can connect to me. There's email the company and it'll come to me, and it'll come to someone here who will direct it to me saying, hey, I got a question. I want to do this. I want to buy data storage products from you.
Hopefully that's why.
Or if you're an engineer and you want a cool job, that's really cool too as we grow, because, finding good engineers is always a lot of fun. But ring us up. Love to do it.
That's all for this week. Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts on today's show. So if you have any feedback, please send over an email to jeffrey@layoftheland.fm or find us on Twitter @podlayoftheland or @sternhefe, JEFE. If you or someone you know would make a good guest for our show, please reach out as well and let us know. And if you enjoy the podcast, please subscribe and leave a review on iTunes or on your preferred podcast player. Your support goes a long way to help us spread the word and continue to bring the Cleveland founders and builders we love having on the show. We'll be back here next week at the same time to map more of the land. The Lay of the Land podcast was developed in collaboration with the Up Company, LLC. At the time of this recording, unless otherwise indicated, we do not own equity or other financial interests in the company which appear on this show. All opinions expressed by podcast participants are solely their own and do not reflect the opinions of any entity which employs us. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.